New York. To win acclaim in this fiercely competitive city is the seal of approval for most musicians, but few make it. One who has been accepted into the charmed circle at the top is the Canadian pianist Glenn Gould. When Gould is preparing for a recording session or concert in New York, he heads first for Steinway's on 57th Street. Down in the basement, a whole troupe of famous concert grands are kept ready for the great pianists of our time.
Well, that's all right, Morris. No, that's what he's here for. That's what he's here for.
Here, Gould hopes to find an instrument that will have exactly the tone and action he wants.
We'll fix it, don't worry.
Let us push on.
Want that stove?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Gould, Mr. Gould. It's good place, though, just the same, the guy, you know?
Well, everybody has to have his own.
No.
No?
You like the Mozart or the piano? What?
Both.
Well,
Too heavy.
here's the one. Let's try this again.
No, I think this is it. Really.
Gould was born with a rare sensitivity to sound, and already at the age of 3 it was discovered that he had absolute pitch. When such gifts are matched with musical intelligence and a fortunate physical endowment, and capped with many years of hard labor, there may emerge a musician of some stature. And such rare persons enter a very special world, with its own peculiar problems, difficulties, rewards, and professional preoccupations.
What you really need is me out at Flushing as an idea man. I mean, after all, the piano went out of fashion as a family convenience at the turn of the century. What you've got to think of now is a mid-20th century piano, something with all these extras that you've just described.
Garbage disposal.
Well, actually, what I would like is a piano with a small, say, 25 horsepower engine underneath it that it could move itself about, you know.
Well, that's an excellent idea. We just say, go to Carnegie Hall.
Right.
We'll eliminate all this trucking monkey business.
Open the door.
Cut cottage costs down to at least $5 a throw.
Tell me something. You have upstairs the old Hoffman chair, which I've seen.
It's out in the factory now.
Well, yeah, it is. Which looks completely formidable to me. I don't know how anybody could sit on it. But apart from Hoffman and me,
Yes.
who else has had a special chair? Anybody?
Paderewski.
Adjustable or just...
No, it was a special chair. It had a leather seat and it had a high back, a support. And as a matter of fact, it has fringe with little balls and little tassels around it.
Huh.
And both the Paderewski chair and the Hoffman chair are out in the factory and are
Then you had
testing
the
them,
Hess.
wearing them.
And how much am I bid for this?
Well, Glenn, I'll tell you, I think seriously that this chair
This
should
should
be
be
willed
this
to
round.
Steinway and Sons.
I tell you, this would be a
Don't speak
Morris
of will.
chair.
Well, I didn't mean that. I meant that you should will it to us,
Yeah.
not in your will and your last will and
yes,
testament,
yes.
but
But if
we'd
this
be
would be
delighted
a
to have it
Morris-
in our
this would be-
magnificent
This is going to be in the. This is
of
going to be in the Morris
memorabilia,
Snapper.
you
This is
see.
going to be
This
in the
would be
Morris
a-
Snapper collection of
be a-
Steinwayana.
be a Morris-
memorabilia of the greats.
This
you
would
know?
be a Morris
The
chair,
seats
I
of the
think.
immortals.
This a Morris chair?
We can do that. That would be marvelous. We'd get them all lined up and take a beautiful photograph sometime, and that we will have it entitled "The Seats of the Immortals."
Yes.
Glenn Gould, Joseph Hoffman, Ignaz Paderewski. I think that would be terrific.
When Gould is not on tour or recording, he spends most of his time at his retreat, a cottage on the shore of Lake Simcoe, 90 miles north of Toronto. Here he works on the piano he favors above all others for practicing, a 70-year-old Chickering with a resonant, harpsichord-like quality, recalling the instruments of the time of Bach. In one respect, Gould's life is very simple. He lives alone for the most part, with his dog Banquo, in the country place where he spent all his holidays as a child. Mrs. Doolittle, a neighbor, cleans up and cooks for him sometimes. The Doolittles remember him as a rather solitary little boy, with strong opinions and a hatred of cruelty, who was happiest in the hours when he was free to practice the piano. Gould needs the undistracting tempo of rural life to concentrate completely on his one love. It is a single-minded absorption, so great that the local storekeeper likes to tell of finding crumpled banknotes dropped absent-mindedly and frozen in the snow. Automatically, he put them aside for Glenn. For dinner, Gould usually drives into Aurelia, 5 miles away. The cafe proprietor, Gincito, is so proud of him that his Wurlitzer often plays Gould recordings of Bach and Krennic at full volume, to the astonishment of the tourists. Gould is not well known locally, and most people are unaware that a young man living down the road draws rave notices when he plays in San Francisco or London. Gould's life seems ideal. Peace, calm, time to study in idyllic surroundings. But his world is also an unnerving one. It takes courage of a high order to play Beethoven before the supercritical audience of Berlin, or to present oneself on the same platform as the great Russian pianists of today.
How do you feel about playing on the concert platform and playing in the recording studio?
I much prefer the recording, and I gather that this is not the standard reaction, because most people find the recording is very trying. They feel uneasy in the presence of something that is going to be permanent, and the microphone conveys this to them. But I feel quite the opposite. The microphone is a great friend because I was brought up with it. When I was in my teens and still at school, I didn't do any traveling at all. The only city in which I really played was Toronto, and perhaps once or twice a year there. And so that if I did any performing at all, it had to be on the radio, or from 1952 on television, when we had it in Canada. And I became so used to these media, to being alone in the studio, that nothing else mattered. In fact, I've often wondered if the justifiable complaints that I sometimes hear about my platform manner isn't a result of the fact that for many years, formative years, I could be completely uninhibited. And it didn't matter what I did, as long as the music got across, this was the only thing that counted for me. Because I had no yardstick of measuring, I seldom went to concerts even then, I never do now. And I had no yardstick really of measuring what other people did. And what I did at that time was done in order to make myself at ease and to get something out of myself which otherwise might have remained in and had to come out on the microphone to get across. And I often wondered if this didn't go back to those days.
Why don't you like going to concerts?
Well, first of all, I think I'm at all times slightly uncomfortable in great crowds of people. I always have been. Tend to become slightly claustrophobic in a large hall. I don't feel at all that way on the stage because there's plenty of room to breathe, but I tend to be that way when I participate in an audience. Less so in a cinema, because there everything is in the dark and it's a sort of secretive feeling. The relationship of one person to another in a spectacle doesn't really exist. You are all sort of pretending that you're by yourself. I always have this feeling in a cinema, so I enjoy going to movies. I also enjoy going to the theater for much the same reasons. But to concerts, for the dual reason that the hall is generally brighter, and also for the much more important reason that I know too much about what goes on in a person's mind who is actually having to do this. And I feel exceedingly nervous at somebody else's concert. Much more nervous than I've ever been at any of my own. It can be the most capable person in the world, and I'm still almost panic-stricken.
How do you like all this traveling you have to do?
When I'm up here and sitting in the country for anything over 10 days or 2 weeks and dealing with people whose relationship to their work is a somewhat more indifferent one in one case, and on the other hand, more regular one in the other, that they know from 1 week to the next what they will be doing, where they will be. It will be the same place. It will be a schedule which is almost unvariable. When I'm with people like this, I find myself envying them very much. And in fact, at such times, I wonder how it is possible that the following week I will be back into a schedule which seems at that moment almost intolerable to me. I wonder how I do it. When you get to that point, when you leave here, I can only say that I feel something like I did as a child when it was Labor Day and the next day meant going back to school. It was a completely horrible feeling. It was a feeling of being trapped as much as one would be if one were suddenly consigned to the netherworld, you know, irrevocably. It was a dreadful feeling. For many years I had a recurring dream, which I think has stopped now, but it came during my school years and shortly after. And this dream always involved variations on the same theme, which was a return to school. And school in this case obviously meant much more than that. It meant a return to a schedule which I couldn't completely control. And it was a dreadful kind of thing. I remember one very colorful variation on it, which I think I must have dreamt when I was perhaps 15 or 16. And I dreamt that I got up one morning up here at the lake and looked out my window, and instead of seeing grass, I saw rock, as one would see 100 miles to the north of here. Just endless rock, a little bit curved, a little bit heaving, but rock. And on this rock there were nothing but dead leaves of some kind. And that was all there was to the dream. And then I, shortly after that, woke up with that feeling that one can never describe, so absolutely sad beyond all description. It was something which I shall never forget. And I had many variations on this same image at that time. And to this day, this is approximately the way I feel when I have to return to a life which I don't really enjoy. Now then, when one gets into it, another kind of thing takes hold. If it didn't, I think it would become so unbearable that one simply could not continue. At least I couldn't. But if you are playing a concert every second or third night for a month, this seems in a way a reasonably normal way to live at the time. It's only when one gets away from it that one realizes what a crazy artificial existence it is.
When musicians get together these days, the shop talk often leads to argument. Gould is a distinguished exponent of the works of the modern atonal composers, but unlike Franz Kremer, he has some reservations about the musical direction begun by such revolutionary composers as Webern.
Well, you know that I was studying with Weber one season in a class with other people, and he was a very shy person, as his music is, rather shy.
Is this shy music?
Well,
music, you know?
But it's spare. I still call it rather.
Well, it's reticent
small,
music.
Reticent, yeah. And he was very, very reticent. And there's no doubt about that.
This is shy music. What do you think would happen if you kidnapped a child today, let's say 18 months old child, and
what a gruesome
well, not in a gruesome way, and took it to a mountain retreat where no music could be brought to it except the music that you would play to it and leave in its presence, and this child would be brought up knowing nothing but pure 12-tone music in the sense of Schoenberg and Webern. Discriminately in the sense of their adherence today, but very carefully selected. Pure 12-tone music. Do you think that by the time this child was, say, 6 or 7, when a child's folk song image is at its strongest, you know, and the period is going on, do you think that they would then be singing
No, I don't think they would.
You think that the interest in music would be stifled completely? Or
no, I don't think so either. I think they would probably by that time have developed their own way of thinking about melodies, and they would have melodies.
Or they just be sticking out their tongues at their kidnappers.
Well, that too. What I wanted to ask you is that you, after all, have done some composing. Nowhere in that composing have you tried to develop any new sounds or anything like that?
Well, this is why I speak A, pessimistically, and B, with some sense of trying to find out if everybody agrees with the fashionable majority who believe that the role of tonality is gone forever from us, because in my own music I write in a style that could have conceivably been handled by any composer of 70 years ago, or certainly 50 years ago. And it's not a question of just doing it courageously and unashamedly. I do it because I can feel for myself no other way in which I want to write. I don't feel particularly happy about this, because I wonder if there is any particular justification for doing it. On the other hand, I can't see any particular reason why one shouldn't say something that has been said before, speaking idiomatically only, because one, after all, doesn't
there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. The question is only that it's a little surprising to me that you, while you're doing it, and you're perfectly all right doing it, and it's a good discipline, but it's a bit like being in school and being told to modulate like Schumann for 4 weeks, and then like Brahms for 4 weeks, and then maybe like Wagner for 4 weeks. But there must be somewhere you want to go if you
That's the
serious
point. I
about
don't
composing.
know. That's the point. I really don't know. For that reason, every individual work is a great effort because I have to convince myself that while I'm doing it, there is no place I want to go, that I'm quite content with this. And I'm not really. And so it leaves the question completely open and unhappy and unsatisfied.
Well, you have a great future before you. I'll tell you that.
In 1959, Gould celebrated his 27th birthday. His ambition is to make enough money by the time he is 35 to retire from the concert stage and devote himself to composing. Meanwhile, he's considered one of the world's greatest exponents of Bach.
This sounds good, but how about trying the other one there? This one here. Can I take this over?
Yeah, let me see what this one's like.
Oh, it does.
Well, this is one that you played in the Philharmonic this past season, and it's because it's familiar to you.
But this is for Beethoven, isn't it? Any,
No. Well, this is for Bob, isn't that correct? You're going to record Bob?
yes.
This selection.
Yes.
Well, here's one that you had something quite a while.
Gould's struggle for perfection extends to the choice of instruments he plays. Only when he has found the one that is right for him can he face a concert or recording.
Well, I'm going to look at it, man. I could be interested.
No, I'm going to stick with this one, Fritz. I think
Well, all right.
this is much the best of what I've seen.
Try this one. You had that one once before, but I guess.
Yeah, but not for Bach, of course.
Okay.
This really needs that kind of agility that this has
After all,
got.
you're
You
the
know?
artist, you're playing, you know.
Oh, yeah, this is a wonderfully clean kind of sound. Clean. I like this one.
Well, the cleanness and the incisiveness, I think, will be very important for you, Glenn, in this particular case.
Yeah.
Fine,
No, this is
fine.
Can I stay and practice a bit?
Oh, surely,
Sure.
surely. Now, you can have the whole afternoon
Oh,
here, Glenn,
wonderful,
if you want to.
Okay.
Wonderful.
And if there's anything on your mind, please call me
Yeah,
upstairs.
I'll be
by
up.
office.
See you later.
All
All
right,
right,
thanks
I'll be
very
around
much.
here
All right.
waiting.
Goodbye, Mr.
Bye.
Snoffles.
Goodbye, Mr. Gould.
Goodbye. Don't
Bye.
Bye.
Say, I don't want to roast you out, but do you think we could have the window up a little bit, the left one now? Would you mind?
Left, why? Don't you feel well?
I'm from Canada up there. We're used to having windows up, you see.
Oh, Canada? What
Yeah.
kind of a place is Canada? What kind of a... Where are you from, Canada?
Well, I don't think you'd have heard of it. It's from a little village called Updegrove.
Upperville.
Updegrove.
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 Oh, that must be something like we have in the backwoods in the United States called Oshkosh. The only real part about it is in what they call, now let me see, oh yes, St. Catherine Street.
St. Catharines.
That's the shopping area, right?
Oh, yes, but you can see the same thing by going down Fifth Avenue, only more so, you know.
What do you do at Columbia Records?
I'm a pianist. Play the piano.
You're a what?
A pianist, musician.
Oh, I see. What do you play? With a long hair, or do you play jazz or bebop, or what?
Oh,
do you play?
I'm the long hair variety.
You have long hair Friday.
Yeah.
Oh, but you must have a beautiful audience. They must be falling asleep at you.
Now a frequent visitor to New York, Glenn Gould first came from Canada to make his debut at Town Hall in 1955. It was a concert so successful that he was immediately put under contract by Columbia Records.
Good morning, Frederick. Morning. Tired.
The first recording he made for Columbia was the enormously difficult Goldberg variations of Bach, a now famous recording which became an immediate bestseller. 4 years and many recordings later, Gould is ready to put on tape and disc Bach's Italian Concerto.
What's the matter? There's nothing wrong with the piano. You haven't played it yet.
Well, I love to be here.
It's all right.
Works.
Must have something to do with the humidity, maybe, huh?
Well, in that case, it shouldn't work this morning, but it does.
Well, maybe it's been stretched or shrunk. So how do you feel this morning? Any various aches and pains?
specifically localized aches and pains.
It's
Just
nothing to worry
general
about.
lethargy.
We aren't going to get a good recording.
It's a terrible thing to see, but you look well today.
Killjoy.
Gould's habit of humming while playing causes a good deal of trouble to the sound engineers, and it demands great care to get a clean recording without extraneous noises.
Now, how do you want to do this? From the top? Well, let's just go from the top and see what happens. What'll happen is you'll play it beautifully. Bach Italian Concerto, take 1. Boy, every kid in the world played this thing.
A century ago had the chance to listen to the world's great musicians, and enthusiasts made journeys to this city to be able to say they had heard Jenny Lind sing. A stone's throw from the commercial heart of America, Tchaikovsky, Dvorak used to conduct. Now, as the recording center of this continent, the city sends the sound of the artists of our time to the four corners of the world.
Good things in it.
Not bad. A couple little bitty things, maybe.
I mean, not bad.
Well, just what I said, not bad.
Well, here comes our barefoot boy with Bach.
Yeah.
Twinings, sir.
My Twinings. Yes, thank you. Boy, that's strong. Did you put sugar and milk and everything?
Can we hear that, Mom?
Surely.
Some pianists are at their best when they have the stimulus of an audience in a concert hall. Others, like Gould, prefer the recording studio.
In one bar, it changes tempi, as you notice.
Here, with recording director Howard Scott, he can listen to himself through playback and can repeat and repeat until he is satisfied he's produced a performance as nearly perfect as he can make it.
Glenn's check was never sent to him, and it's sitting there, and he's too gosh lazy to pick it up. You know? So I wonder if you'd call him and tell him to send it to him. Yeah, his last check. They can send it, as long as he's in New York, they can send it right over to the hotel. Where are you staying, at the Westbury? Send it to the Westbury. I'll get it to the French Restaurant. Yeah, the note. second movement.
Okay, let's go.
Want to do the whole thing again?
Yeah.
How's your finger?
It's all right, I guess.
Piano all right?
Yeah.
Stand by, please. Second movement, take. You superstitious?
Yes.
Take 14.
Thank you. Cut it. Start again.
15.
I love the conducting he's going through. It's marvelous. Oh, we supply everything at Columbia Records.
Almost everything.
It's a shame it's not back there.
Yeah, he hasn't moved a knob since he came in here.
Well, that's the best kind of controlling on masterworks. The less knob twirling you do, the better. That's been the curse of it in the past, you know, cranking up every little thing in monaural so that it'll get over the other things. But in stereo,
I don't think I hear enough strings in this section,
that's
actually.
completely horrible.
Thank you. Much better now.
Italian concerto.
It was bad.
Oh, God, Louise, I was weeding last night.
Apartment full of live flowers because
Sure.
the more you cut, the more you get.
Sure, what do you plant? What did you plant?
It took us many
Yeah,
years
to realize that. What did you plant? Flowers, I know what you mean. They have things and the smell. Oh, they're nice, petunias. I don't like geraniums, though. Why don't you plant poppies and open up an opium business on the side?
Marijuana going there too.
Marijuana?
Marijuana's an It was very funny when we came over here.
I think that's it.
I want to listen to that just to find out.
Yeah, that was very good. Now, I don't know. I can play for you the one we did yesterday, too, as a comparison, which I think you better come in and hear.
A little light, maybe. That should be a slow trail, not a fast one.
This is very good.
Yeah, it is very good. They both are in their ways. I'm going to try to do a compromise.
Now we're going to compromise between the two. I think it should.
And then we'll leave it, because we've got plenty to do.
Well, we don't really.
You mean
the problem is we don't have plenty because of the tempo difference.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just been a question of making them. Both are good in their way. This last one was quite good, too, really. Albeit it lacks some of the contrast, it's quite good. Because it has certainly a great deal of spirit, and it holds together.
It's quite good, but you wouldn't okay it.
I'd okay it.
Oh, well, let's go to the next piece. I got that out of you real easy.
No, I don't care.
That's one way of getting it okay. So now what are you going to do? Beethoven? Brahms?
Very funny.
Seriously, though, we do not have a great deal of choice. Obviously, we can fix that one note.
Oh, we fixed it.
But we don't have a great deal of choice. We couldn't go from one to the other of this at all.
We don't need to, but there are no clinkers except for that one note.
One note in each one.
Each one.
Yeah.
There are no clinkers. There's no problem in that way.
No.
It's either or. I mean, it's.
All right.
But I still think we can find a compromise version. In the meantime, I'm going to do a last movement now, before I get tired.
Before you go back to this.
Tired, then come back.
All right. Fine. After you're worn out as a control man, you get less money, you become a musical director. Because the only thing, compensation you have is you can boss the guy that you were once doing, you know.
That's what you think you are.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think. I'm positive I ask you to put in high end and he puts in low. He does what he wants anyway.
More on the clarinets.
But, yeah, and he takes it off.
Listen, how do you feel about pictures?
Must I?
Well, we need them, yeah.
Don.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're here today. Don't you think it'd be a good idea to get Glenn to at least put a scarf and some gloves on?
How about the
Are
gloves?
you kidding?
How about the gloves up on the piano?
Glenn, you know I never kidded you.
I've had quite enough of that sort of picture. We'll not. No.
It's good enough for England and AP.
Well, the English press is, the English press.
Well, if you get 21,000 pounds or whatever it is out of it, I don't see why you shouldn't grab it.
Yeah, that's
Rhapsody in Blue.
That's all I.
Every pianist studies clear.
How about one of those reductions in Wagner?
Get back in the mood. We have to have tea. At least 5 minutes. At least 5 minutes. Absolutely.
In the 4 years since I've known Glenn, he's grown from a small town hick
Just one doggone minute.
Well, I mean, after all, he was a kid that came out of Toronto, and I don't think you'd ever been out of Toronto, really, since I met you 4 years ago.
My dear sir, I had toured the Canadian provinces widely.
That's what I mean. You were a provincial hick.
He's gotten fatter, I'll say that much.
He's John Barrymore now, as you can see. I mean, obviously, he can act.
He used to have sunken cheekbones.
That's right. You see, the first thing happened to Glenn was he came to us as a small boy with chicken feathers and straw in his hair. He could play the piano like a whirlwind, and he did his first piece that he did, he recorded for us, which no one had ever done, the Goldberg Variations, which was on the bestseller list. And here it was a bestseller list with an unknown, as I say, really a small-town boy who came out of literature.
Well, there's something slightly exotic about coming out of Canadian snows, I admit.
Something coming out of Canadian woods, you know. I mean, they expect you to have a Mountie uniform or something, but you bring the same intensity. And I attribute this mostly, Glenn, to something you said before, which is very interesting, on why you don't live in New York City. I think that it's most important for an artist, and you are one of the very few artists, and I know a great many, that realize the tremendous value of getting out of this rat race or whatever you want to call it.
It's curiously enough, when you get in the country, your whole relation to music, mine anyway, changes. You know, it's. I remember when I was a kid, I always, for some reason, associated the New York Philharmonic broadcast, which we used to hear in Canada on Sunday afternoons at that time. I used to associate them with great vast fields of snow, white and gray, because when I was a kid, we used to always go up north in the country for weekends, and usually about 4 o'clock in the afternoon when the Philharmonic would be on, we'd be on our way driving back to Toronto, and during the wintertime when they were on, driving along on a usually gray and a sort of endless vista of snow, frozen lake, horizon, this sort of thing. And Beethoven never sounded as good, you know, it was sort of the original cinema stuff. It was I shouldn't presume to analyze, but I don't think you have quite the same psychological strain of living here as I would, because it always occurs to me that the most difficult thing for a musician particularly, when New York is to a certain extent representing debut town, you know, it represents the most dangerous, the place where one fights for one's career.
It's the trap of the world.
And if one has to combine that with it being hometown, these are, because for most people, and certainly for me, the most difficult place to play in is one hometown, you know. I go through agonies when I have to play in Toronto. New York bothers me almost not at all, but Toronto is sheer hell.
Is this going to help your performance, I trust?
It's going to
make a more fluid one, I'm sure.
It's going to liquidate the errors. That was pretty bad, wasn't it?
Pretty awful. I know the performance will be 100% better. Here we go. Italian Concerto, first movement, take 2.
Third movement, what are you talking about? We're doing a third this time.
Want to do the third movement? I'm sorry. I thought you still wanted to work on the first.
How long is it? Maybe we have to reload?
No, we don't have to reload. It's 24 minutes. Third movement, take 1.
Even with the highest level of skill and patient study of a composition, it takes days of work in the studio before Gould is satisfied he has recorded his best.
It's difficult. It's
very difficult. But as you know on the record, you have to exaggerate a contrast, really, more so than you do in public.
The other thing to do would be to do a whole second half, starting here. Because that's a marvelous stroke to get that, and we didn't get it at all.
Yeah, it's coming through.
Wait a minute. Oh, it's a question of how far forward you sit on it. That's what does it. Yeah. You sit at the front, it does it. Well, let's try anyway, see what happens. Let's see what it is just now. Where's the financial feeling?
Glenn, you know you can read the... Glenn, now this is the difference in Glenn Gould.
In 4 years.
In 4 years. When Glenn first came in here, not only didn't he care about the financial page, he couldn't read the financial page.
Right.
This morning, at 11:15, he's not only able to read the financial page, he's able to find out what the value of the Canadian dollar is. Right now, I'll caution you that this should be a straight piano solo without vocal obligato. Bob, would you play that one back, please, this last take?
Say hard.
Will you play this take back, please, this last one we did? How do you feel?
It wasn't bad.
No, I think it was a good take.
Got it.
Yeah. Might be it.
Got it. I don't know.
Take 8, take 5, take 8. Good tempo.
There's a nice leanness about it. It isn't too pushed.
No, that's good. Good contrast. Watch your head and the mic.
This time it didn't drop.
Yes. So far we're covered.
Wonderful.
That's a wonderful image.
Awkward things in Bach, you know. It's really
How long did you work on this? How long have you been playing this piece?
Played it for the first time when I was about 13, I think, something like that.
So long.
But I've never really played it in public because I don't like it very much.
I mean, you dropped it.
I should say it, but I don't.
Went back.
Well, yeah, I played it from time to time, but every 3 years I take it out again and try to restore enthusiasm. But
good.
I think this is it. It's extremely good.
Got it.
We're finished.
Done. Good. Great. Good take.
We can
Now what do you want to do?
Quit? Quit. Of course.
Finished. Okay, Bob, wrap it up. Knock it off, Fred.
That was a very good week, I must say.
Yeah.
Easier than most.
I don't know why. Now, when do we come back?
About 3 weeks, I think.
3 weeks.
We'll do another conventions.
And we want to check the B-flat partita.
B-flat partita and a little to see what we can do.